Hi, I'm Greg Lucas, California's State Librarian. I want to welcome you to Today in California. It's 1936, and we're speaking with Aimee Crocker, who's the recent author of her autobiography, And I'd Do It Again. And it's an amazing autobiography. I'm not really sure where to start. Can you tell us just a little bit? You grew up in Sacramento.
Sacramento, San Francisco, Europe. My name is Aimee Isabella Crocker Ash Giligorod Mishnikov, sometimes Princess Galatzine.
Would you like me to call you Princess?
Oh, absolutely, call me Aimee.
Aimee, okay.
Yes. Well, I was born in Sacramento, and I was a bit of a wild child. My own mother called me a hellcat. I'm afraid I was let to run wild in Sacramento, and I spent a great deal of time on the ranch and down at the docks, baby, flirting with the sailors and sea captains. And they would give me little treasures and tell me stories about far-off lands, and I think that's perhaps when I began my fascination with the Orient. I spent a great deal of time in the Orient and in Europe between marriages and with marriages. And as you may have been counting, there were 5.
5.
Well, 5 in the traditional sense of the word.
How many in the non-traditional sense?
No, we lose count after a few, don't we? No, I was married 5 times, but it's not as though I was quick to rush to the altar. No, I never felt the need to be married. I just happened to marry 5 times in 5 different decades of my life, but always to men in their 20s.
I read in the book you had a long time boa constrictor companion.
Ka. He was one of the true loves of my life and stayed with me for a great time. It's an interesting story how that came about. I was visiting friends, and there was an Indian princess who had possession of the snake, 12 foot long, 8 inches around, very muscular. And one day when I was visiting her apartments, I saw 2 beady eyes on the side of my chair, and I looked over in great horror, and there were these 2 red eyes looking at me. Well, Princess assured me that he would not harm me. And later that night when I slept, Ka came up onto my bed and rested alongside me. The Princess came in and she said, "He likes you, he belongs to you." Well, most people wouldn't have taken that too seriously, but he was a great comfort to me, and I kept him with me. A snake tattoo on my wrist, which was one of several tattoos. I don't know you well, we won't watch those, but I had a party for him.
Try and keep it at a family level here, right?
Well, I am Aimee Crocker.
Right. So, just briefly on Ka. So, how did you transport him?
Very often wrapped around my neck.
Like a boa.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I couldn't resist.
One day in my apartments in New York, I threw a party for the Grand Prince Ka, the Maharaja. Well, my gift to all of my guests were little snakes, and it was not well received.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no accounting for taste.
I agree.
So, in your travels, what would you consider the most memorable?
Oh, there are so many memories.
And you've been to Hawaii a few times.
Oh, a few times. When I was a child, as I said, I was a bit of a wild child, and Mother decided at age 14 that it was time that I go to finishing school. And like so many of the American women of wealth, that sent their child off to finishing school, and I went to Dresden, Germany, with several friends, and that's where I really learned to cuss and smoke and parade about in yards and yards of courtly silk. Eventually, I was presented at court, and I was finished. And nearly were our finances. It seems as though that our guardian had not only run up mounds of bills and absconded with all of our funds, but she was nowhere to be seen. And Mother came to fetch me, and as my punishment, I was touring Europe and ended up in England, where I met King Kalakaua of the Sandwich Islands, as you say, Hawaii. Right. Well, he said, "Please visit sometime." It's East, and I love the East. And after my first husband and I divorced, I went to the Sandwich Islands. And there I met with King Kalakaua and the Queen, and he presented me with an island, made me queen of their 300 inhabitants, and gave me the name of Princess Pele Ikilani, which means bliss of heaven.
Wow. So, your first marriage and the divorce, it wasn't,
Oh, yes.
from the book anyway, it didn't look to be an amicable parting.
No. There were quite a few details of that set the scandal-loving public tongue wagging. I had married Porter Ashe on a whim. I returned from finishing school, and I was 17, and I decided that I was mature and ready to wed. But who? I had several suitors. Porter Ashe, Harry Gillick. But how to decide? Well, since marriage is always a chance, why not a game of chance? And we played a game of poker dice, and Porter Ashe won. We eloped that night, and we're married, and out of that came my daughter Gladys, or later known as Alma. Well, nasty, nasty divorce, and charges were leveled on both sides, and it ended up in the courts. The judge looked at both parents and said, neither of you is a fit adult, using the term loosely, and awarded custody of Gladys to my mother. My daughter was now my sister.
There's a song in there somewhere.
And on, and chorus 2, later on my third husband had a younger brother. And my daughter came to visit, fell in love with Powers, and married him. Now my daughter's sister was now my sister-in-law.
That's too deep for me. Now, I want to say from looking at the book, so your second husband also stemmed from not the same poker game, but
The same poker
the same
game.
poker game. Okay.
Yes, he was one of the other parties in that. And so, well, if the first didn't work, perhaps I chose the wrong one. Some say that the poker game was a bit, I believe you say loaded.
Oh.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Well, I want to thank you, Aimee, for being with us and talking about your autobiography. But before we go, some advice?
Oh, advice. My advice is
And to have a full
a full
life, what do you tell people?
always live, always love, and never regret. My only regret in life is that I could have met more people, done more things, experienced more cultures. That is my only regret. And I will tell you, let the Mrs. Grundys of the world lift their nose and reach for the smelling salts. I was never immoral, but unmoral. I did things, I experienced things, and I might tell you to do the same. And if you ask me about my life, yes, and I'd do it again.
Aimee Crocker, thank you very much.
My pleasure.